So based on the different like kind of topics that Carson had sent over, I thought one that could be interesting is just talking about finding your style in the art world, and like specifically when it comes to photography and videography. Because I feel like, especially when you're just getting started with things, or maybe you've been doing it for a little while, but you're kind of like trying to get it to be more professional and go out into the working world with what you're doing, that becomes sort of like a big question. What is my style? How do I define what I do to like a client? And also like asking yourself the question, do I want people to hire me just because I know how to use my camera and I know how to click the button? Or do I want them to hire me because I have a specific point of view that they are seeking out? And I feel like in this day and age too, especially, there's so many people in creative fields, especially in like the photo media side of things. And there's such a need for it, but there's also just so many people doing it. And finding your style is really what will set you apart from other creatives and help you kind of stand out as someone that people want to work with. Because, you know, if everyone and anyone has kind of a camera these days, it's having that point of view that's going to make you kind of special in the eyes of a potential client. So that's what I wanted to start with. And you can see here, I have like a few slides that we'll talk through about finding your style. It's not as challenging as it might feel sometimes. I remember early on when I was getting started, I was like, gosh, I don't have any style. Like, what am I doing? I just do shoots randomly and they're all different. And I feel like there's no consistency and I don't really know like where I want to take this. And once I started to really think about what my style was, it actually came very easily. And there's a few ways that I kind of uncovered it. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about, and how we can, like, once we've kind of uncovered it, how we can start to like implement it more intentionally and run with it. Okay, so finding your unique style, your point of view, how do you find that? I think it really starts by asking yourself the question, what makes you you? And sometimes we like really don't know, you know, we have to really dig a little bit and just like silence all the noise and say like, what do I actually think or feel, or what do I like, you know? And those kinds of questions that you ask yourself are what starts to influence your point of view. So one way to go about it is to think like, what am I naturally drawn to, or what do I like? When I'm looking at social media, or also I should just check, can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I can't see anybody, but sometimes I'll like hear a little noise, and so I'm like, just want to make sure. When you're looking at social media or you're taking in content from different platforms, what is the thing that like really inspires you, that you're drawn to, and that excites you and kind of like gets your gears turning? That for me has been a really good way for me to kind of find a path of like, okay, this is where I'm going to head with my creative work. I'm going to try and like focus on what are the things that I like, and then start to bring that into what I'm doing, and not just create just for the sake of creating or do anything and everything that comes my way, but actually do the things that I know are going to be the most exciting for me. Another great way to kind of determine what is my unique point of view is to listen to what other people are saying about your work. A lot of comments that I get from people, whether it's just like, you know, a portrait client that I've worked with, or friends or family or other photographers, is that like something that I typically get described as is like, my style is very clean, or my lighting is very clean. And at first I was like, what does that even mean? But I think what I've come to realize is that like sometimes there are different aesthetic things about a picture that are making it appear kind of like clean or simple, or like something about the lighting or the quality of the light gives it a very like clean, polished look to it. I think even with this picture on the right with the cowboy, there's something clean about just how simplistic the composition is. And it's like just the silhouette on that kind of smooth sky background. And it's not like, there's not a whole lot of texture or things distracting in the image. It's a very like clean and simple image. So that was one comment that I had been hearing consistently that was like, okay, this is something that people are seeing in my work, and I can like pay attention to that and maybe start to use that a little bit more intentionally. Another thing that people comment on a lot is like my lighting, and I think especially when it comes to studio photography, that's something that people will comment on. And that was something early on that I was really focusing on trying to nail, and had worked with some photographers that I really admired, who I thought had really beautiful studio lighting, and tried to kind of, fine tune my own skills by working with them and doing workshops and things. I kind of built up enough experience in the studio environment that people began to say, like, I can see a picture of yours and I know it's yours without even seeing your name on it because of the light and the way that you like photograph people. And I found that really cool. Then it's also thinking like, okay, if I'm going to plan a project or I'm thinking about something to do, what is going to light me up? What's going to get me going and make me feel really excited and passionate about doing it? Because you want to make sure that when you're pursuing something in the creative field, that you're doing something in the realm of things that you're actually excited about, because it's easy to just do work to get paid and to just focus on getting a paycheck, which is important. But in the long term, if you're not doing anything that's exciting to you or inspiring to you, you'll start to feel kind of burned out by what you're doing, and it won't have that same creative passion behind it, which is what makes the work good. So it's important to have that, even if it's not all the time, but most of the time. And then thinking too about like, what are things you naturally do when you work? When you're actually out taking pictures or taking videos, what are the things that you tend to do from a technical standpoint, even if it's just like a habit or, something that you're not intentionally doing, but you just do it because that's how you've been taught, or that's how you always did do it. And I think an example of that would be like, if I'm working with people, I like to photograph people from certain angles. I like to direct the subject to like look at the light in a particular angle. Sometimes I'll find myself like photographing somebody from the same vantage point pretty consistently. So like, that becomes a consistent thing in work. If I don't change up my vantage point, you'll start to like see patterns with that. So just thinking about, are there things that you're already naturally doing? And if so, are those things kind of defining a style for you? So as we're kind of uncovering this for ourselves, the biggest piece of advice that I think most people hear is just to shoot a lot. Start collecting data with what you're doing by shooting all the time, having projects going, working with anybody and everybody at first to determine like, what do I actually like and what do I not like? Because it's easy to look at things visually online and say, oh, I like that. But until you're actually in the moment and you're doing it, you might not really fully know if you actually like that for yourself or not. It helps you to pick out those common themes when you're shooting all the time and you have enough work under your belt so that you can say like, oh, I've had a lot of experiences and now I can pick out these patterns that, I keep doing this, or what I really like about all these shoots is this aspect of it. Once you get comfortable in doing something one way, like maybe you're starting out or you're doing a bunch of shoots and you get to a point where you're like, okay, I feel like I've done a lot of the same stuff, and now I want to push it. I want to try something that's the complete opposite. That can sometimes give you direction and help determine, like, stylistically what you're passionate about. Another really helpful thing is to have someone else review your work. And it could be just a friend or someone you know, like a family member, but it helps if it's someone in your field, or like a teacher or a mentor or someone who can look at your work objectively and give you insights about what they're seeing. Because sometimes we're just so close to what we're doing that we don't really perceive it the way that other people are going to perceive it. And so by hearing that feedback, it can just be helpful to, like, give us, a set of eyes that aren't our own, that can make us think differently about what we're doing, or inspire us to change something. And it helps to, like, from a review standpoint, if you have an objective, like you say, I want to be working more with these types of clients. This is my work. What do you think about it? Am I heading in the right direction? If you have an objective in mind, sometimes that helps the review kind of fuel what you're doing next and make it very purposeful. And then finding new perspectives by exploring other mediums of art. Sometimes I get really inspired by things that aren't photography. Like, I'll get inspired by music, or I'll see like a really cool movie, and the cinematography in the movie and the lighting in the movie is really inspiring and makes me want to do a shoot based off of that. Or sometimes it's just being out in nature or traveling to a new place that I haven't been to before and seeing something new that can give me new ideas for what to create. So those are some ways that we just get more data for ourselves in order to start, like, formulating our opinions and our style and the way that we go about doing things. This picture on the right here is just like a really old photo of me borrowing a friend's photo studio, working with two friends of mine that I'd worked with before. And one thing that I really liked to do was work with models more than once. So I would, do a shoot with like a particular theme, and then I'd say, oh, what else could that person be really cool for? And I'd come up with a new concept and try it again, and then keep doing that. And it was helpful for me to kind of just like try out different concepts, but I also really liked working with the same people over and over again because of the familiarity that you start to form, and the way that when you know somebody, you actually can, there's more comfortability when you're working with them. You get different things out of them that you wouldn't necessarily get with someone that you're working with for the first time. And it becomes these like fun working friendships that you can have for years to come. Also, I meant to say about this picture with the cowboy. So this was a project I started last spring, and I had gone to grad school a couple years ago, and the program that I did ended with a thesis project where we're basically choosing a theme and creating a project of like 15 to 20 images that all had kind of a consistent look to them, and it was supposed to be like a photo series. And I really enjoyed doing the project then, and I said, I kind of want to do another project like that on my own, and I don't know what to do. I didn't know kind of what my concept was going to be, and I was getting really hung up on the idea, and that was kind of preventing me from starting anything, because I thought, well, I want it to be really artistic and really cool and different, and I want it to challenge me, and there were just all these different components that were kind of keeping me from doing it. And then finally I realized, I'm never going to do the project unless I just start with something. It doesn't have to be the most perfect idea. The idea can change and it can evolve, but I need to get going with something. And I landed on just the idea that, like, what am I excited about? What is fun for me? And what will be inspiring? And I thought, well, I really like Western, like cowboy aesthetic stuff. And I just was like, that would be a fun theme. I think I would have fun with that. So that's what I did. And I talked with a friend of mine, this guy in the photo is named Calvin, and we did a shoot together. And that was like the first one. And then we continued to do more. And since then, I've done like 6 or 8 shoots with that same theme in mind. And I'm kind of like building up imagery within that series. And eventually I want to like turn it into a book or print or something like that. But I think what's been really cool about it is the imagery has been really exciting for me, and I feel like I'm growing a lot artistically in taking the photos. And it really just started from me being excited about it and wanting to shoot this particular concept. Like, the concept is not new or novel or that interesting, but I think for me it is, and that's enough to make it worthwhile. Okay, so jumping ahead, what you see is what you get. So I think about this when it comes to style. When we are doing art, and specifically with photography and videography, whatever's in our frame is determining our style. So if I'm taking pictures of like a grungy rock and roll person with like a lot of tattoos and like dyed hair and stuff, that person's look and the aesthetic that I'm capturing in that photo is determining sort of stylistically my work. And so when you're thinking about like, okay, what is my style? Think about the things that you're tending to photograph and how those things are formulating sort of a look or a persona or just like a brand identity for you. And because I'm in sort of like the fashion space, a lot of times I think about this with the types of models that I like to work with. It's funny how, like everyone kind of has like something that they view as beautiful or interesting. And I feel like the people that I work with tend to be very diverse, but there's something about a person's face or their features that I come back to that to me is like something that's a little bit more classic. It's a little bit more like typical beauty versus like an androgynous or like kind of more edgy beauty. Like, I go for things that feel a little bit more classic and I don't know, some in that world. And it could be any type of person, but something about their features kind of has that like classic, elegant beauty to it. I also tend to shoot a lot in black and white. I tend to use lighting in a very specific way too. And all of those kind of factors are what is making up my style, even if I'm not really intentionally doing it. Just because when you look at the photo, what you see is what you get. Like, that is the style. And so when we start to cultivate it, it's determining, okay, based on everything that I've photographed, what do I want to include and what do I want to exclude? What are the things that I like that are going to propel me forward with the type of work that I want to do more of and that I want to get, versus the things that I don't really want to be doing, that don't align with my style and the things that I like and my vision. And then being really particular about what you're including and excluding. I also think it's really funny how the picture on the left here is one of the first studio shoots that I ever did, and that was probably in like 2011 or 12 or something around there. Like, it was a long time ago now. And then this one on the right was more recent, I would say within the last like 5 to 8 years. And not a whole lot has changed. I still use similar lighting setups. I still like to kind of capture people from the same angles. I still have like certain things about the photo that I really enjoy, like the way that I pose people's hands and arms, or the way that I like turn their face to the camera, the way that I like, especially for like women in these situations, like I don't like them to look perfectly polished with their hair all perfectly in place. Like, I like things to be a little bit more undone. And those are the things that when I take the photo are coming through and that are like my consistent themes that I can pull from. Another thing to think about when it comes to this is you can elevate your imagery just by the production value that you're putting into what you're doing. So I think about this with like a creative shoot that I might be planning. If I have a cowboy project, I could go all out and like, buy a really nice cowboy hat. I could ask a friend who has like horses on a ranch to use their property. I could get a model who really looks the part and, like looks like a cowboy in the photos, and find like authentic chaps and boots and things that will like help to make it feel really authentic and cool. Or I could like buy stuff off Amazon that kind of looks the part and just like, do it in a field somewhere and just like make it work with random odds and ends. The production value in some ways is really going to help determine stylistically like what you're doing and help to sell the concepts that you're creating and make them feel really well produced, really thought out, and just like more successful when you're portraying that idea. It also comes with sometimes working with other creative individuals, especially in the fashion world. A lot of times you're working with makeup artists, models, wardrobe stylists, hairstylists, prop stylists, like all these other kind of creative individuals. And sometimes, if you have this idea and you approach these other creatives about the idea, if they're excited and they're on board and you all want to work together and like build this really cool portfolio material, you can create something really awesome because you're not the one having to go and find all those pieces. You have people that are bringing that and their specific talents to the project. And so you get to focus on the photography and let those other people bring their expertise to enhance and elevate the images, and just take them to the next level, which is awesome. And then just another last thing I'll say about this one is notice the nuance when it comes to like what you're doing. And I think that comes from, once we've shot a lot, we've taken a bunch of pictures. If we really look at them and kind of analyze them, we start to pick out those themes. So like what I said about these two portraits where we have the hair and like the texture in the hair and things not being so perfect. I think that's a really good example of the nuance that we start to find in our work. And that just came from preference, like that's something that I find beautiful and not everyone does. Some people are like, oh, I hate flyaways. I can't stand when there's like hair flying all over the place. And sometimes even like a hairstylist or a makeup artist that you're working with won't necessarily be on the same page as you with that. And so it's important to like explain to those people in the moment, like, this is why I like this. Or, if you're working with someone new that has a different point of view, if they're doing it in a way that doesn't make sense for what you want to do, explain why and explain what you want them to do instead, so that you can get what you're trying to get. So I also think in these early stages, when you're getting your feet wet and like trying to determine your style, you might be shooting a lot. It's important to think about trying new things, not being afraid to expand your horizons, because initially it's sort of you're getting your experience doing anything and everything. And then you're determining from that, like, okay, this is what I really like. This is what I don't really like so much. And then you can narrow down and focus in. But at first it's like, you want to try anything and just get the experience. One, because it's going to help you understand what you like, but two, it also is going to challenge you, technically speaking, when you're trying different things, when you're getting out of your comfort zone, working in different lighting scenarios, working with different types of teams, doing small productions versus big productions. All of those things are going to help you be better at your craft. And when it comes to, something down the road, if you get asked to do a specific kind of shoot, you'll probably have had that experience at that point and will feel confident going into it. And I think about this shoot on the right here. I did this for a magazine that was based in New York. And I remember with the editor, I was friends with the person who was editing this magazine, who like owned and published it. And they really wanted a very specific look for this shoe. And it was something that I had been seeing a lot on social media and in the fashion world, but I hadn't really done anything like this before. But I knew I could. So I was like, let's like really fine tune what it is that we are liking about these things that we're seeing, so that I know how to like shoot that. And then a lot of it actually came in the editing process, with just doing things to the images, manipulating different layers and textures and things to give him a certain look that is really nothing that I would have done on my own. But having the experience and then having the shoot come out of it, I was like, wow, I'm really glad I did this, because this is one of my favorite shoots to date. And I feel like it's so different from what I do, but it still feels like me. And that was an important thing to discover too. It was like, I could shoot it in a way that I look at it and I still feel like it looks like my work, but it's something new and different for me as well. And sometimes we don't really want to do this type of thing because we're afraid of failure or flopping at some project. And that's totally valid, but it's also okay to come away from something feeling like that wasn't my best work. I've had plenty of shoots that I've done over the years that I was excited about it in the moment. I did it. And after the fact, came away feeling like, okay, well, I'm probably not going to share those pictures, or I'm not going to post them on my website. But, I had the experience, and like, who knows, maybe that was more about just like working with those different individuals in the moment and the connections I was building. Or maybe it was just, to learn what I didn't like. But I think sometimes it's okay to not want to share it or have it be a part of your portfolio afterwards, because it's helping to educate you and give you experience in different ways. And learning from your peers, that's such a good thing to focus on. Is sometimes when it comes to photo and video, we're often working really solo, and it's not a very team-oriented thing all the time. So it's really cool sometimes to be able to shadow other photographers, assist other photographers, work on other people's shoots, and just see how other people are shooting and working, and learning from them in the moment, watching their process, hearing how they direct people on set, seeing how they approach taking the photos, and then seeing from that shoot, like, what was the aftermath? How did those pictures come out? And thinking about how you might do it differently, or something you might do the same as them the next time. So that's a great thing to try and do as well, as working with other people and trying new things through that. So once you've built up enough work, you've kind of determined for yourself, like, these are the things I like, these are the things I don't really like. Then in order to really show people, this is my style, this is my vision, it all really comes down to how consistent you are with what you're curating for your online presence. And oftentimes it's like your website and your social media. And, if you had a printed portfolio too, that might be part of it. But I think for us in the photo media world, it really is just our online presence. And on the right here, I just took a screenshot of my wedding social media. I have a separate account completely dedicated to weddings, because I feel like it's different enough from the other work that I do that it needs its own space. And I've been really focusing on being intentional with the images that I'm putting out, especially because when it comes to weddings, I'm trying to attract a certain type of client, and a certain price range for the types of weddings that I'm booking. And so I'm only putting out imagery that aligns with what I think that ideal client wants, and what speaks to that more like luxury style of working, and just being really, really intentional with every single post, so that it feels like a cohesive portfolio that someone could look at it and immediately tell kind of what I'm about. And it helps when you have this standard to measure everything by it. So if you're posting a video or a photo, thinking about like, okay, does this do something for elevating my brand? Is it speaking to my ideal client in some type of way? Is it um, stylistically cohesive with everything else that I've been posting? And if you can answer yes to those things, then it makes sense to post it. But if it's something that's completely random and doesn't make sense, then it might be worth, like shifting what you're doing a little bit to make it work, or maybe just saying like, okay, maybe I don't need to post that one. I don't know. And just this idea that you're only as good as your worst shot. I feel like this comes into play when thinking about your website. Our websites, it's easy to want to put anything and everything we've done on them, to be like, look, I've done this and I've done this, and look at all these projects I've done. Some of the most impactful websites are very minimalistic and have like just a curated collection of things that really are hitting the highlights. And social media is a little different because we want people to get a sense of the work, but we also want them to see our personality and who we are, and understand like the bigger picture of like the artist behind the art. When it comes to the website, it is like, this is the vision of your work. This is what you want clients to be seeing, and it's very pared down and streamlined and is just the best stuff. And if you're able to go through and really comb through the work that you've done and pick out the best images that all are like, the things that you would show a prospective client, then that's what's going to make your style really shine and make it so that when someone comes to your page, they're going to know exactly what you're about. And then lastly, I think when it comes to style, most of the time we're thinking about aesthetics. We're thinking about how things look and the way that we're posting or the way that we're putting things on our website. But our style as a creative business owner is really also about how we approach our work and the client experience. So it can go bigger than just how things look. I love to think about like, what is the style of doing business with me? Like, how do I want people to see me as a business owner or a working professional? What do I want to be known for? What is the experience that I'm creating for the client, apart from just taking a pretty picture of them? Like when they walk in the room to get their photo taken, how do they feel? How do I greet them? What am I wearing? How am I presenting myself? Am I super prepared with everything's already set up and they come in and we can start shooting immediately? Do we have like a little time to talk and chat beforehand to like get them warmed up? What does that full experience look like for the client? And that can also be virtually too. Like when someone inquires to work with me, how do I respond? Do I have everything aligned on the back end for like, if I'm going to send them an invoice, and if I have kind of like documents and things, what do those documents look like? Are they stylistically aligned with my brand? Is it easy for someone to book with me? Does the experience of booking with me feel luxurious, or does it feel kind of like a hobbyist or something? So those are the things that I mean when I'm thinking about style beyond aesthetics. It goes into like every single aspect of how you're working. And I think too about when we're living our life in other ways, like the way that we dress, the way that we furnish our apartments, or the car that we drive, or the places that we go and the things that we do. Like a lot of those things they don't have to, but they can relate to the type of work that we're producing. And I feel like when I've heard other people talk about that concept, it's like, if you want to be working with a certain caliber of individual and making a certain amount of money, you need to go where those people are. If you want to be working with wealthy people, like, you're probably not going to find them at, like, I don't know, a local coffee shop. You might find them at, like, a high-end coffee shop at a nice hotel, or you might find them working out at Equinox, or like, surrounding yourself with the people that you might potentially be working with, and aligning how you're living with that person's, like, ecosystem of life, so that you're in the same stratosphere and you're not, like, completely separate from that, because that's also going to influence your work and how you're putting your stuff out there. I think sometimes when we know exactly who it is we're creating for, we can produce things that are more intentional, and then those clients that we want to work with can see themselves in what we're doing and be like, oh, he gets it. Like, he knows exactly what I want and can produce the things that I'm looking for, and you're aligned with the client's vision as well. So hopefully that makes sense. But I think just thinking about, beyond our aesthetics, how do we approach style with our business? And lastly, I just really liked this quote: an artist is not paid for their labor, but for their vision. And just going back to that idea that when it comes to the creative world, especially these days, especially when there's a lot with AI and other methods for generating creative material, I think it really comes down to your unique vision and how you're curating things. I think that's something that AI can't take from you, is, like, your point of view and your taste. And I've been hearing that a lot recently, and I think it's so true. To have, like, a really unique perspective is the thing that's going to cause you to stand out the most and to be invaluable. Like, you won't be able to just be tossed to the side if you really have a strong in things. I think the people who do tend to get tossed to the side are the people, and they're just there to press the button and do the work, but they're replaceable because they don't necessarily have, like, an approach that's separating them and making them distinct. They're just sort of doing things like anyone else would. So I like that quote for that reason. But that's all that I kind of had. I think we had planned on about a half an hour of me talking, and I think I went a little over, so sorry about that. But if anyone has questions, let me know. And you can also see more of my work on Instagram and TikTok. My website, actually, I removed my website temporarily, so it's just Instagram and TikTok, and that's my username for both of those. But I will stop sharing my screen. And then if anyone has questions, we can do that. Happy to go back to, like, any of those points that we were talking about.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mhm.
First of all, hello. Thank you for coming today. My name is Maz, good friend of Carson's. Um, while you were talking, I kind of like felt myself thinking a little bit about like I just feel like sometimes I overthink like sort of like the fundamental elements, and this might be because I kind of just learned them being in college. But I feel like I overthink the fundamental elements of like both photography and videography to the point that it kind of puts me in a box. And I'm curious, like, where do you find yourself drawing the line between like spontaneity on a shoot and like intention behind what you're doing? Because I found that actually some of my best photos come from just pointing the camera and shooting, even if I'm
Mhm.
not looking through the viewfinder, you know? So I'm curious your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When you say being focused or caught up on, like, the fundamentals, do you mean kind of like the technical side of things, with, like, I need to make sure that the lighting is this way, or, like, the camera settings are this way?
Yeah,
Or is it
mostly.
something? Okay.
Yeah, and I like
Yeah.
a lot of
Oh,
time.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. A lot of time I find myself, especially with like leading lines and like composition, I'm trying to like get everything perfect. But like in your portrait that you just like showed, like you're not exactly even on like there's not like the exact amount of space from like the borders of the picture. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like it just looks naturalistic, but also like well with like made with well intent. So
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point when it comes to like, you know, the artistic principles behind what we're doing are important, and they can help get us set up well. And we know that we can like always turn to those things in order to like fall back on something and make something good just based on the fact that like that's a standard way of doing something. But I think it is helpful in the moment to like have a plan and then be flexible enough to stray from the plan. And I was actually thinking about this recently when it comes to like creative projects. um, I was planning something and I had all these ideas. I think I probably had too many ideas. And then when it came to actually doing the shoot and implementing them, I was getting a little stressed about how what I was doing was kind of like different, or it didn't match up what I actually wanted to get from the project. Or just the fact that like what I was actually, you know, coming away with, or like the person involved, or like the things that I was taking pictures of, it wasn't the same. And at first that was kind of like a little discouraging, like, oh gosh, did I kind of just like do something that wasn't what I was intending to do. But I think I also, like when I realized that, I just said, okay, well, what is happening right now? What do I actually have in front of me? And how can I just like focus on being in the moment and kind of pull from things that are naturally going on versus trying to force the agenda? And we all kind of like have our safety net of where we like to kind of work from, whether it's like, I always like to shoot in this type of lighting, or I always like to have my settings be like this, or I know certain poses that I fall back on, or something like that. But if you can just give yourself some breathing room to try something, even if you don't know if it's going to work out, I think that's sort of what helps us to keep growing. And you don't have to do that the whole time, but it is nice to just like filter some of that in here and there, and start little by little. And hopefully that can like cause you to start doing things differently. But does that kind of help answer that, or was there something else that I probably could have
No,
hit on?
absolutely. I think like really the very initial sentence you said, where it's kind of just like have a plan and be willing to stray from it, really encaptures I think what you're talking about. And it's just like,
Okay.
yes, be conscious of the fundamentals, but also just like pretty much any other creative pursuit, like be willing to like stray away from them when you're actually putting it in motion, so that you can ensure like the creativity is flowing like the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. Very insightful.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hey Andrew, Carson here.
Hey.
Quick question. So, I'm thinking about like you talking about how that first picture really showed your style, and like while it, some things may have changed, that first picture, even though it was a long time ago, wasn't dramatically different than the other one that was more recent. So in that way, how do you think that your style has evolved and changed, like your portfolio and all, from your time beginning in college to now? Like, do you think it's
Mhm.
really just become more polished and more technical, or like the what you're showing? How do you think it has changed in your career so far?
Yeah. I think it's definitely become more focused. Um, and I've realized that I can be more selective with the types of things that I'm doing. I also have realized when it comes to like creative projects or portfolio building things, if I'm going to do it, I really want it to be aligning with what I like. And before, I would kind of just do something just to do it. I don't know if I really cared too much if it was like stylistically something that I resonated with. And because of that, I feel like the work I put out is more consistent. But I also think over the years, like when I was first starting, the people I was working with were, like friends of mine or my family, or models who were just getting started, and like clothing, I was like borrowing my sister's clothes or just like finding things to make it work. And now I like have an approach that maybe feels a little bit more professional, and I'm working with people of like a little higher caliber, which enhances the work. I have different creatives that I can turn to, like makeup artists that can really elevate the look of the person in the photo. So I think all of those things stylistically too have like shifted the work really in a different direction than it was. But as far as like lighting goes and just like how I like to take photos, I don't think that has changed too much. Although, you know, I think now I'm trying to like just push the boundaries more when it comes to like if I'm doing a shoot with someone, I want to try and get as much variety out of it as possible, and maybe try new techniques and just like keep pushing to see where I can take it. But I think because I've been doing it for so long, like the technical side of things has always kind of remained pretty much the same, and like the things that I end up liking to shoot have stayed pretty similar.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I like what you say. So like really just as you've gotten more into it, just naturally like everything's become higher caliber and more just better as you've gotten older.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
I love your work. It was really beautiful. Okay, this is
Thank
my
you.
question. You talked a lot about having a website or curating your social media to look a certain way. What has been your best way to make your content cohesive, or even the most important things to put on it for it to stand out, especially for the website?
Yeah. I think for the website, you know, if you have a lot of work that you've done that you could put on there, it's simply just like being really like showing a lot of restraint when it comes to what you're putting on it, and really picking the stuff that's going to put you in the best light. And sometimes it's hard because we might be personally attached to something that we've done, or like, oh, that shoot was so fun and I really had a good experience with that, but like the photos might not be the strongest. And that can be when it's helpful to have an outside opinion on stuff, to like say like, okay, this one it's fun, but like this one's better, you know. And then when it comes to also putting up the work on your website, like, you know, sometimes we might have like 100 images from a shoot that we really really like, but do people want to look at 100 images of one shoot? Probably not. I think probably they could get the gist of the project with like 10 to 20 shoots. Or what is like the minimum amount that you could do for someone to get what you're trying to say with that project, you know? And that can be really interesting if you start to say like, okay, what would this look like if I was only allowed to post 5 of these? What would be the 5 that I would post, you know? And then you start to think like, okay, well, this is the best shot, you know. If I had to choose, I can tell. And you kind of just have that feeling inside of you of like which one is the strongest. When it comes to social media, again, it's like it's different because you're also just trying to show your personality. And I think there's different approaches. Like some people really really curate their profiles to make it almost look more like their website, and some people don't do that as much, and they'll show like more behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. But I think even making that choice is something that's like a stylistic thing for you as an artist. Like for me recently, I've been like, you know what, I kind of want to just focus on behind the scenes stuff. And so I've been really only posting videos that are all behind the scenes with the photos at the end, to see what that would do. And from like a stylistic standpoint, how does that read? If someone were to come to my page, they see someone that maybe feels like a little bit more relaxed or like easygoing and lets you in on the process, and like there's certain things that might convey to people versus going to a page that's like everything is like the perfect finished work, and it's all like really beautiful and there's no like everything feels like it relates to each other and it's cohesive and stuff like that. So I think with your question, like those are things that you might think about when you're posting or putting stuff on a website, but it kind of comes down to just like personal preference and what you want that to look like coming from you. Like if you were to go to someone else's page, what do you like and what do you not like, and what are you going to then apply to what you're doing?
Would
that
you
makes sense.
recommend having multiple accounts for different things you would do? Like you say you have a wedding account separate from your other account.
Yeah.
Would you recommend doing that for like
I have mixed feelings about it. I think for me, when it comes to weddings, like the reason for that switch is mainly just because like the wedding industry is so particular, and I wanted people to see like, from the wedding work, I want them to feel like, oh, this person, that they're like an expert in this. I kind of didn't want people to see all the other stuff and think like, oh, well, he just does everything. I want the wedding clients to be like, he really knows his wedding stuff,
I see that.
even though I do other things, But when it comes to like, I know a lot of photographers who maybe they're just a commercial photographer and they have food and like clothing and products, and they do video as well, and they just like have a big mix and range of work that they do. I think if you're marketing yourself as somebody who does a little bit of everything, I think it makes sense to just have that be all represented on your page. If you wanted to like really niche down and choose a focus, then I think it's good to like narrow in on what you're posting and stuff. But again, like it also kind of depends on your market and where you are. In Seattle's not that big of a fashion market. And so like coming here, in order to really get like a lot of jobs in like the fashion world, we don't really have that many clients. Whereas like in New York, you could really like double down on the fashion work and be like, I'm only going to post fashion and kind of like silo it out that way. Here in Seattle, I feel like people tend to do more of everything because there's a little less opportunity in some of these specific markets. So that also depends like a little bit where you're living and where you want to be at or where you want to end up. And if you can like niche down versus if you kind of need to have like a little bit of everything to make it your full-time job. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Well, we have a quick 3 minutes left, it looks like, until it closes. Anyone have anything else to add real quick? Alright, well, that looks like it's it. Thank you so much, Andrew. This was so awesome and helpful. I think everybody got a ton out of it.
Yeah, thanks you guys. Glad it worked out. Thanks again for asking me. And yeah, keep in touch. If you have any questions down the road, just let me know.
Will do. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you later. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Andrew.